Hey, I'm Akurios. It's Friday and I'm going to be showing you in this video how I mix horns. I'm going to be revealing to you how I arrived at the horn sound in my song I. Coming up. Alright, first of all, let's listen to the sound, the final sound of the horns in the mix, right here. First of all, it's not a bad sound at all. It sounds okay. And I think I should point out here that these are synthetic horns. They are not original live horns played by human beings right here in the studio. They are programmed horns. And this particular library, if I remember correctly, is Session Horns Pro. And I'm going to be unveiling that to you sometime in the future. But it's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. And the fakeness of the sound is not too prominent. And that's one of the goals that you are aiming for when mixing synthetic horns. You're trying to make it sound as real or less fake as possible. So it's not real. It's not real. So even though it was recorded and sampled by real human beings, the library itself is not real. So you just have to make peace with that and do your best to make it sound as real as possible or less fake as possible. Okay, so what we have here, of course, is we have the trumpet, we have the saxophone. I think that's an alto saxophone, if I remember correctly, just one alto saxophone. And then we have a trombone and a tuba, I believe. No, two trumpets. Pardon, I beg your pardon. Two trumpets, one saxophone, and a tuba. And then together, without any processing on any of them, this is what we have. Let me bypass all the processing on them. And of course, all the processing on the music bus. Right here, it's just an EQ. And then this is what we'll have. Okay, again, that does not sound bad at all. That's the raw sound of the horns. Doesn't sound bad at all. That's why I didn't have to do much. I didn't do much at all. Just some compression, some EQ, and that's it basically. So I'll show you what I did at each stage, and then we'll take it back to the mix and listen to the general sound and what it introduces to the entire mix, what part it plays, what role it plays, and then we're done. All right, so I'll start from the music bus because every single instrument is going to the music bus or the music group. And that is because of my style of mixing. I like to play with buses a lot. And from the last audio video, stop that. From the last audio video, remember I mentioned grouping things and sending them to a bus, similar sounding instruments or similar sounding vocals, sending them to a bus, processing them at that bus before going out. And I mentioned in the last video that for a lead vocal which doesn't have any group or doesn't belong to any group, it's by itself, it's going straight to my two bus or going straight to my main outputs. But these horns are three different instruments that I grouped together, processed together, and then sent to the music bus, which accommodates all the instruments in this particular mix. So what we have here, first of all, okay, let's listen to each instrument or each group of horns. The trumpet here. and then saxophone, and then we have the trombone, okay. So that's what we have on the individual level. So first of all, I'll show you what I did in the music group. All I did here was a low pass filter, and that is around 10 kilohertz. And of course, it's just rolling off everything after 10 kilohertz. And there's a small bump right here. There's a small bump right here, just to make sure that there's still some air left in the mix on the sound. All right, and then in the horns group, this is what I did. First of all, I compressed them together, and then we have an EQ here. This is the McDSP filter bank E606, and I'm doing just one main thing here. Of course, there is a high pass filter, but that is not the reason I'm here. The main reason I use this plugin, I used an EQ in the first place, is to make this boost here. And as you can tell by now, I'm sure you know by now that I really like two particular brands of EQs. No, three actually. Of course, the Fab Filter Pro Q3, then the Waves REQ, and then this particular EQ, the McDSP Filter Bank series, all of them. And this is the Filter Bank E606. I really like the sound of these EQs. I like the sound of I like the Fab Filter EQ because it's transparent and it can do a lot for you in your mix. So here I'm just doing a small boost around 5.5 kilohertz. That's 5,500 hertz. And if you know how horns sound, you will know that around 5 kilohertz horns are very, very, very nice sounding, and you can introduce some flattering sound to them, and at the same time you can make them pierce through the mix more by boosting 5 kilohertz, between 5 and 7 kilohertz, just to bring out that air and that bite from the horns. Okay, so that is all I am doing in this particular EQ, and that's on the horns group. Just the compressor, the CLA 2A, and then the McDSP E606. That's all I'm doing. So if I bring that in, bypass, so there's less air and then there's less cohesion also. So we're bringing them together, making sure everything sounds together and all the horns are tight. And then those staccatos, those short notes are biting and piercing through more in the mix. The compressor is helping to make them stand out more. And on the individual level, what we have going on here is the T-Rax British channel. This is the T-Rax IK Multimedia's version of the SSL channel. Now what I'm doing here is two EQ moves. I'm rolling off 5 dBs from around 130 hertz, taking out some lows from these horns. They don't need it, so I'm cutting that straight out. And the second EQ move I'm doing here is around 7.5 dBs. I'm boosting around 5 kilohertz, between 5 and 6 kilohertz, also because of that bite. You want the horns to bite and pierce through the mix. That's what you're looking for. And then I'm also doing some compression here. I have the threshold set around 17, and then the ratio is around 5:1. And that's some heavy compression going on, but the release is fast. It's just 0.2. It's a very fast release and a fast attack also. The fast attack LED here is on, but I also have the hard setting here because I want it to bite, which is one of the characteristics of the SSL channel strip. This particular channel strip is known for its, sharp edge of a sound, and that's what I'm looking for. That's one of the things I was looking for in this particular horn sound. So that's what we have on the individual uh, channel level, and it's the same thing for the sax and the same thing for the trombone. So, sorry, for the trombone, which is the lowest sounding instrument out of the three, there's no roll off of the lows here, but there's the boost around 5 kilohertz. However, and there's the compression also with the same settings, just around the same settings, 5 to 1, and then 0.2 on the release and the threshold there. But we have nothing going on in the lows. I'm not cutting out the lows because I wanted to retain the low end it has. So let's bring them in and listen to the sound. Okay, so I'm just going to loop this particular region, and I'll take them out and bring them in, and you'll hear. Back in. Yep, so you can tell that what I'm looking for is the high end, that high end sheen, the sound piercing through the mix. Now let's play it in the mix and listen to how that sounds. And I bless your name. Okay, let's give ourselves, our ears some rest before we go to that particular session. I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. Today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord. I bless your name. Jesus, you're too good. Oh, yeah. All right, so without now. I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. Today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord. I bless your name. Jesus. So it's kind of dark and too mellow, but with the individual processing, we now have the bite. I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. Today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord. I bless your name. Jesus, you're too good. Oh, yeah. And even in that chorus here at the end there, where all the instruments are playing the same melody, the horns still come out and kind of dominate, because that's what I wanted to achieve. I wanted them to really sound like they were in control because of the kind of music this is. All right, so let's take that again. We have, of course, on the music bus, just an EQ rolling out some high end. And then the horns group, we have an EQ boosting around 5.5 kilohertz. And then we have a compressor doing some. I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. Today. That's some heavy compression. That's about 7 dBs of compression. But I'm also introducing, of course, the sound, the vintage warmth of the CLA2A, which I really like, especially on instruments like horns, bass, vocals, anything, any instrument that sings. I really like the sound of the CLA2A on them. So we have that. And then on the individual levels, we have, at the individual level, we have the SSL channel strip doing just 2 things, 2 EQ moves, and then the compressor is doing some compression also. And then I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. So compression at the channel level, at the individual channel level, is just about 6 dBs by the SSL channel strip. And that's not too much. And when you put it together with the compression of the CLA2A, which is a slow compressor, we don't have too much compression because you don't want to over compress. You just want to do enough. You just want to do as much as you want to do to achieve what you are looking for. And one of the things you need to pay attention to is I'm going to do a video on how to hear compression, but one of the things you need to pay attention to is what you're losing from the sound and what you're gaining from the sound. Listen to the high end, listen to the low end, what is happening to the low end, what is happening to the high end, what is happening to the attack of the instrument, what's happening to the speed of it arriving at your ears compared to other instruments. Is it now, laid back, or is it now brought forward? Does it sound faster than other instruments in the mix? These are things you need to pay attention to while you're making your compression moves. And you have to have a goal. You have to have a goal, what you're aiming for before you even load up the first plugin. What are you trying to achieve? That's the most important thing. That's the most important goal you need to have in your mind. What you're trying to achieve is going to inform every single EQ move, every single compression that you are going to make, because we're not just slapping on plugins and processing on these things because we have the plugins. We're trying to achieve something in the mix, and I wanted these horns to pierce through. I wanted them to have that high end. I wanted them to sing, and that's what I have here.
I bless your name, oh I bless your holy name, today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord, I bless your name, Jesus, you too.
Let's go to another section of the music.
Oh, grateful to you, for all you've done for me, I am thankful to you, grateful for all you've done for me, yes. Whoa, I lift you high.
Let's listen to that again.
Oh, grateful to you for all you've done for me. I am thankful to you, grateful for all you've done for me. Yes. Whoa.
All right, now let's go to a section that has legatos. Let's hold it with the staccatos for a bit, and let's listen to the legato part. The part where the horns are just playing legato, smoothly linking up and slurring the notes that they're playing. So let's see what we have here at this section. You can see that the horns are just singing, and yet they're still coming through in the mix.
I lift you high.
Again.
I lift you high. I lift you high.
So even when we don't have the biting, stabbing, staccato sounds of the horns, we have just legato, smooth playing, but the horns are still coming through. And that's one of the things we want to achieve by the EQ and compression moves. All right, now let's take a look at some panning decisions I made. So here we have, of course, the horns. So we have the trumpets. They're stereo because I made these, I bussed all the trumpet sounds that I had into one stereo channel. I grouped it into one stereo channel. I did the same for the sax. I did the same for the trombone and the tuba. So I just have them around the same, 50-50, left and right, 50-50. But the trombone and the tuba are a little wider. That's around 40, sorry, a little narrower, 45-45. And then the saxophones are 55-55, because I wanted the saxophones to be the widest, and then the trumpets are closer to the center, and then the lowest sounding horns, which are the trombone and the tuba, are closest to the center. So based on that panning option, okay, and so we had something that wasn't too wide, but at the same time had that space and had the presence in the mix. So let's listen through this session, this section, sorry, I keep saying session, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, with the mix.
Oh, grateful to you for all you've done for me. I am thankful to you, grateful for all you've done for me. Yes. Whoa, I lift you high, high, high. I cannot worry. Oh, the King that does good. I lift you high. Your name, oh, I bless your holy name. Today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord, I bless your name. Jesus, you're too good, oh, yeah.
All right, so there you have it, a section from that just before the chorus, from the pre-chorus to after the just before the refrain. All right, and that's the sound of the horns on this particular song. That's what I achieved, and that's what I went for. And you can see there's not much that happened in this mix, just a little EQ and compression here and there, and then we have what we have right here. Now, if you listen closely, you would hear that the EQ moves that I made actually introduced a sense of space, especially on the individual level, in the individual channel level of the trumpet, saxophone, and trombone and tubas, because I didn't want to use some reverb to drown the instruments in an ocean of space so that they're not very, detectable in the mix. I wanted them to have, a sense of air, a sense that, they're sounding from a small distance, a short distance away, but not to actually apply some reverb on them because they would be difficult. It would be a little more difficult to hear them in the mix if there was reverb and delay on them. So I didn't want to use that. But the EQ and compression moves I made introduced a sense of space to them at the same time while boosting, especially the high end, the 5 to 6 kilohertz. All right, there you have it. I hope you learned something. And if you did, drop a comment in the comment section and I'll be glad to get back at you. If you have any questions, anything to add, I really want to also hear about how you mix your own horns, whether they are real horns played by real musicians in your studio or whether they are synthetic horns played by your fingers in your studio on your keyboard. I really want to hear some feedback from you, and I'll be glad to get back at you on that. So till when next we see, I'm Akurios, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, grateful to you